Two mugs in a workshop. Hi, I'm Ian at Two Mugs in a Workshop. In this episode, we're going to do a bit of a rewind. We're going to discuss why we bought the BMW G310R motorcycle from eBay, which clearly had problems and that we hadn't even seen before we bought it. So the story really starts back in 2002. I used to own a BMW F650 CS Scarva, which is the single-cylinder 650 belt drive machine that BMW produced at the time. They were a little bit unusual. It was a great commuting motorcycle, and recently I decided to start looking for another one. And of course, I found one on eBay. So, this is the BMW F650 CS Scarva that I talked about earlier. The bike only had two owners. The last owner actually was an 80-year-old lady who'd upgraded to a trike. I can recommend these guys, 100bikes.co.uk. They were lovely people to deal with. I'd have no qualms about buying from them over the phone. Lovely, lovely people. This bike, I'm glad to see, has found an owner. It's got a deposit taken on it. And as we scroll through some of the photographs, you can see the funky design of the Scarva. On this photograph, you can see it's even got the original luggage with it, the tank top luggage, because the fuel tank on these is under the seat. It was supposed to improve the centre of gravity of the bike. The belt drive, which was really quiet. In fact, these were lovely bikes to commute on. They were well balanced, quiet, had ABS, heated grips, trip computer, the whole lot. I mean, for 2002, this was quite advanced at the time. I believe it was a joint development with Harley Davidson, the belt drive. But on some of the photos, a couple of little things to do. You can see that the covers on the side of the engine and transmission prone to corrosion, and even today, and even on the G310R that I bought, signs of corrosion. It seems to be a problem that BMW can't get around with the salt on the British roads. But yeah, there you go. So really lovely bike. It's nice to see that it's found an owner, but it just wasn't the bike for me, because whilst looking for this, I actually bumped into the G310R, which I now own, and that we'll go on to discuss. The BMW G310R is produced in India by a company called TVS. Now, TVS make loads of different bikes, but one in particular, the TVS Apache 310RR, as pictured on the screen. Well, I don't know about you, but I think that's a nicer looking bike than the BMW. And it seems that BMW agree, because the rumour is that in 2024, the Apache will come to the UK wearing a BMW badge. Smaller engine motorcycles like the BMW G310R have always been popular in the Asian market. Indeed, they're primarily produced for that market. The reason is that they're cheap to produce, so they're cheap to buy, they're cheap to maintain, they're cheap to run. And a typical journey profile might be in a large city doing lots of small runs from point A to point B. In the UK, we use motorcycles maybe slightly differently. Not all of us, granted, but many people will use motorcycles as a form of recreation. And I mean, a BMW G310R wouldn't be the bike of choice to go on something like the Scottish North Coast 500, for example. For those viewers watching outside the UK, the Scottish North Coast 500 is approximately 500 miles of open road around the north coast of Scotland, as you can see on this map. It's a very popular destination for motorcyclists and indeed tourists. In addition, the UK motorcycle licensing rules make it very easy for somebody to ride, for example, and for the sake of argument, to ride a 125cc motorcycle or less very easily. But to ride a more powerful bike requires further training. Now, if you're going to do that further training, most people just would decide, I'm going to go and do a full motorcycle license, i.e. what we call the A license.
That allows us to ride any motorcycle with no power restrictions and not having to display any kind of plates to identify us as a learner, or that we require further training on the front and rear of the motorcycle. So if you're going to do that training, then why would you buy a 300cc bike? Most people would be of the opinion that you're probably going to buy a 600cc bike or 1,000 or maybe even higher. Now, I appreciate that the argument was fairly simplistic, but I hope it goes to illustrate that there's always been a very narrow market for this type of motorcycle in the UK. We can discuss this further in the comments, so let me know what you think. We'll move on to take a look at offerings from BMW, both new and used bikes on the website. The first thing we notice when we look at the BMW Motorrad UK website is that BMW offer the Rookie to Rider training. So this is for new motorcycles. They're offering various levels or contributions towards rider training. In fact, they offer all sorts, including insurance, riding gear, all the usual stuff that you expect from a BMW dealer. But let's not forget that this comes with a price tag. So £5,000 for a brand new G310R in the UK, which for our overseas watchers, that's going to equate to approximately $6,500 US. Now, at the time of making this recording, the best used BMW G310R available on BMW's own website is this one in the centre of the screen. One previous owner, 1,000 miles, and there's a £2,000 difference between the price of a new vehicle and this one. This will almost certainly be a demonstrator vehicle or a loan bike. It'll come with 2-year balance of the manufacturer's warranty on it. And I personally think that's a fantastic deal. So why didn't I buy one? Well, the truth is I came close, but I really don't like the styling with the red wheels and the red frame. Okay, I get it, it's a personal choice. And again, maybe we can discuss in the comments. But for me, that red frame just looks like scaffolding. And I really think that the black frames on them and the black wheels, for me, looks a lot better. And it fits in with my future plans for the bike. Without giving too much away at the moment, I can't tell you what that's going to be. So there you go, there's a selection of bikes available. And there's one there which is got the black frame and the black wheels on it, which I prefer. I'm just not a fan of the all-out black colour. In fact, the colour schemes have got something to be desired, I think. I think they could definitely improve on this, particularly when you compare them against that Apache RR, which looks infinitely better than the colour schemes available here in the UK. So, having realised that I wasn't going to be able to get the colour scheme that I desired from BMW, and indeed maybe the price tag was a little bit too high for my intended use on the vehicle, I decided to turn to the used market. And the first place I looked was eBay, just to see what bikes had actually sold for in the past. So here I think is the best example I found at the time of bikes that had sold on eBay. Now this one is a 2018 model. It comes with heated grips, TomTom rider, data tagged, very well looked after with a full service history, both of the keys, and is well documented by the seller. Yet it still only fetches £2,000 at sale. Now, it's the middle of winter in the UK, so prices might be slightly softer at this time of year than maybe in the spring when the weather starts to improve. But even so, a used bike without a warranty isn't going to sell for much more than £2,000, particularly when we compare it against a dealer price of £3,000 with the balance of 2 years warranty remaining. This is actually the bike that I purchased from eBay. First thing you'll notice is the asking price was £1,800. Taking a look through some of the pictures, bike looks in good condition. There are some marks on the fairings, though none of the fairings were cracked. That was accurately described by Mark, the seller. Dashboard wasn't coded in. The ignition lock had been replaced, so we suspect that the bike had been stolen at some point. But all in all, the bike looked straight, and Mark had done a very good job at getting the bike mechanically sound. He needed the motorcycle out of the way. I wanted to buy a G310R. So I figured that at this moment in time, not having seen the vehicle, and known that there was problems with it, particularly this one, where he says that the vehicle won't rev beyond 4,000 RPM, that was the difficult decision for me. That was the gamble. Was there something wrong with the engine or not? Now, it's not possible really to buy a push bike for £1,000 these days for something half decent. So my line of thought was, if I was buying the motorcycle as a commercial project, I would probably want to pay £1,000 for this motorbike. That wasn't really realistic though. Mark was very honest in the way he described the bike. And unfortunately, one of Mark's friends had committed suicide, and Mark's priorities had changed. He's currently restoring the scooter, and they're going on a charity ride later this year to raise money for charity. So we agreed to meet somewhere in the middle, and we agreed on a sale price of £1,300. I also offered him an extra 50 quid to go into the charity if I could get it running, if I can make the vehicle roadworthy, which I will honour. And in the later episode, perhaps maybe we'll even take the bike out on a ride and we'll go and meet Mark and hand over that £50 to say thank you, really. I think that would be a really nice episode to do. With the price agreed, I decided it would be prudent to run a used vehicle check. Now, there's many companies that offer these services. And the first thing to note is that the vehicle has never been recorded as stolen. That doesn't mean it hasn't been stolen, but it was never recorded as stolen. There was no outstanding finance on it. The vehicle's never been an insurance write-off. There's no accident categories on the motorbike. So far, this is looking promising. But we can see here that there is a history of salvage, and indeed, Mark purchased the vehicle in June 23, and it's now January 24 when I agreed to purchase the motorcycle from him. One thing we didn't know is how many miles this motorcycle has covered, and it was a big gamble. For all I know, this motorcycle could have done more miles than the Millennium Falcon. The MOT history, which the MOT in the UK is a roadworthiness test that's performed annually on a vehicle, it had never passed an MOT, so we can only assume that the vehicle went missing or was stolen or was taken off the road before the 3-year anniversary of the vehicle. And this starts to make a little more sense when we look at the salvage photographs. Again, it tells us all the information about the bike, where it was sold and the sale date. And when we start to look at the actual salvage pictures, which I'll blow up, we can see this watermark across each photograph, and it says 2021. Now, I can't be sure that means that the photographs were taken in 2021, but if they were, that would be interesting, because that would mean that the vehicle stood for around 2 years before finally being sold at Salvage. I guess it's conceivable with COVID that maybe this happened. We really we'll never know the answer to that. But you can see there's some corrosion on the bike and the chain. It's clearly been stood for a while. Aftermarket handles on the vehicle. Bearings are hanging off and missing. In fact, some of them are in the carrier bag on the handlebars. The wiring's been damaged, which Mark actually repaired before selling the vehicle to me. The digital dash display, the cluster, the combi, as we call it in our other videos, was completely missing from the vehicle, and he bought a brand new one from main dealer and replaced it. The rear tail light was missing. and we've got the corrosion around the transmission engine casing. Vehicle is data tagged, so that would put a lot of people off seeing those photographs. But given the work that Mark's put into the vehicle, I was fairly confident that this vehicle would be a good buy. Then I made another discovery to do with the mileage, which firmed my decision to buy. Now, I work as a BMW specialist. I specialise in the software, so software upgrades, coding, programming, interior type fixes, and awkward fiddly jobs that nobody else really wants to do. My company's called Blue Meets White, and I work alongside Mark, who's the other mug in the workshop, and Mark runs Mark's Independent BMW. Mark's been a trained BMW technician for over 30 years, and Mark does all the mechanical work and the oily bits. As part of daily routine, we have access to all of the BMW workshop systems, and that includes the electronic service systems. Now, the G310R motorcycle doesn't use the electronic system. They still, in fact, I've got the book from my vehicle, which you'll see here. They still use the paper-based system with stamps in the book. And I was quite pleased when I got the motorcycle to find that I had the 1,000-mile running in stamp in the book, but nothing beyond that. But I put my VIN number into the aftermarket service system we get access to called Casio, and something interesting came up. So this finding in the BMW service system was that the motorcycle had been to dealer, and when it's been there, the last mileage was recorded. That equates to about 4,000 miles. Now, it could be a software update, it could have been a manufacturer's recall, or it could have been a service. We know it wasn't a service because I've got the service book, and the service book isn't stamped. It's unlikely it was a recall because there's 2 outstanding recalls on the vehicle, which I can show by clicking on technical campaigns. I'm not going to do that because there's 2 outstanding. One of them's a nice one, and we're going to save the surprise for a future episode. We're actually going to take the vehicle to BMW, have the recalls performed. We may even have a full service done on the vehicle and a health check. Only other thing that it could have been was a software update. And in the last episode, we confirmed that because we worked out that the software was updated in 2021. So from that, we know that the vehicle was probably damaged in 2021, that it did sit in the Copart Salvage for 2 years before Mark purchases it in the middle part of 2023. Before taking the vehicle to BMW to have the outstanding recall work performed, a full service including the valve clearance check, and also a vehicle health check, there's a few things I'd like to get out of the way. The first was one of the advisories that was spotted on the MOT, which was wear to the rear cush drive. It's not significant, but nevertheless, I'd like to do it and just get it out of the way. And at the same time, we'll replace the rear sprocket. So join us in the next episode where we start that work. Thanks ever so much for your support. Like, subscribe, and make some comments. Thank you.